Once upon a time, there lived a couple called Mr. Obinna and Lolo Ujunwa. Obinna and Ujunwa had always dreamt of having a son to carry on their family name. After welcoming three beautiful daughters in quick succession, they were overjoyed when Ujunwa finally became pregnant again. However, their joy soon turned to heartbreak when Ujunwa suffered a devastating miscarriage. Over the next several years, the couple went through the emotional and physical turmoil of multiple failed pregnancies and fertility treatments. Ujunwa's body went through the strain of countless procedures, leaving her feeling like a failure as a woman. Obinna watched helplessly as his wife spiraled into deep depression, blaming herself for not being able to give him a son. Just when they were starting to lose all hope, a miracle happened. Ujunwa became pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy progressed smoothly, and 9 months later, the long awaited son, Samuel, was born. Obinna and Ujunwa were overcome with joy and relief. Finally, having the child they had so desperately wanted. From the moment Samuel entered into the world, his parents doted on him endlessly. They had gone through so much heartaches and struggle to bring him into their lives, and they were determined to shield him from any potential pain or hardship. Every one of Samuel's needs and desires were instantly met, with Obinna and Ujunwa constantly showering him with gifts, attention, and protection. One morning, Obinna walked into the nursery where Ujunwa was gently rocking their newborn son, Samuel Chukwuemeka Obinna, in a rocking chair.
How is he doing? Has he been sleeping well?
He has been an absolute angel. I can't believe we finally have our son after all this time.
I know, my love. It feels like a dream come true. We've been through so much, but it was all worth it to hold him in our arms.
I just hope we can give him the best life possible. I don't ever want him to know the pain and heartbreak we experienced.
We will make sure of that. He will never want for anything. We will surround him with love and protection and ensure he grows up happy and fulfilled.
That's all I want. For our son to have the childhood we never had.
He will, my dear. I promise you, Samuel will never feel the sting of disappointment or hardship. We'll make sure of that, no matter what.
As Samuel grew older, his parents' overpampering only intensified. He had never known the sting of disappointment or the value of hard work, having been given everything he wanted without any effort on his part. Obinna and Ujunwa, still haunted by the trauma of their past fertility issues, were too afraid to let their son experience even the slightest discomfort or challenge. Little did they know, this would ultimately do more harm than good, leaving Samuel unprepared for the realities of the world beyond his gilded upbringing. Every whim of Samuel was catered to, every tantrum soothed. Ujunwa, in her fierce love, had built a fortress around him, shielding him from any criticism or correction. She forbade anyone, even her own daughters, from reprimanding him, fearing that any harsh word might damage his delicate spirit. Samuel, raised on a diet of praise and indulgence, grew accustomed to being the center of attention. He learned to manipulate, to demand, to rage. He became a master of throwing tantrums, of twisting situations to his advantage. His sisters, once his devoted playmates, became his target, his victims. They learned to walk on eggshells to avoid his wrath, to tiptoe around his moods. Mr. Obinna, Ujunwa's husband, a man with a quiet demeanor, began to have feelings of concern for the delicate balance of their family. Their daughters were getting neglected more often than not. He knew Ujunwa's love for Samuel was fierce, bordering on obsession, and he worried about the effect it might have on their other children. Obinna, though he loved his son dearly, tried to reason with Ujunwa. He pointed out that Samuel was developing a sense of entitlement that was too unhealthy for a child his age, that his unchecked behavior was creating a rift in the family. But Ujunwa dismissed his concerns. Her love for Samuel clouded her judgment. She was not listening to anybody. As Samuel grew, his unchecked behavior began to blossom into a thorny vine. He became a master of throwing tantrums, of twisting situations to his advantage. His sisters began to resent him, and their mother likewise. They learned to walk on eggshells and to avoid him entirely. Obinna, heartbroken to see his daughter's spirit dimming under Samuel's shadow, tried to intervene. He spoke to Samuel, attempting to instill a sense of responsibility, but his efforts were met with defiance and anger, because after all, mommy would side me. Samuel began to see his father as an obstacle, a threat to his privileged position. The daughters, especially the eldest, Ada, felt a simmering resentment towards their mother. They had always felt a disparity in treatment, a subtle but constant reminder that Samuel was the favorite child. Ada, a bright and responsible young woman, had always strived to be the good daughter, the one who never caused trouble. Yet, her efforts were always met with negligence. Ada had tried to reason with her mother, urging her to see Samuel's behavior for what it was. He's not a child anymore, Mama. He's hurting you. He's hurting me. He's hurting all of us. The villagers are complaining. But her pleas were often met with anger or denial, further fueling her resentment towards her mother. Ujunwa would always reply her, Nne, you don't understand. Her voice tight with a mixture of fear and protectiveness. He is just going through a phase. He's an adolescent. You will come to understand him one day. But for now, please leave him alone, Uju will always say. Beatrice and Clara, the other daughters, felt the same resentment Ada had towards their mom and Samuel. Beatrice will always ask, are we not humans? Are we invisible? Do we not matter? Is it because we are girls? Their resentments were expressed differently. Beatrice, the quiet and introspective one, withdrew into herself. Her silence, a symbol of her unspoken pain. Clara, the youngest, became increasingly rebellious, seeking attention in ways that mirrored Samuel's destructive behavior. Because why not? If Samuel, with all his stubbornness, got mommy and daddy's attention, maybe they will also give me attention when I start behaving like him. The once harmonious household became a battleground of whispered anxiety and stifled frustrations. Ujunwa, blinded by her love, refused to see the monster she had nurtured. She blamed everyone but her son, clinging to the belief that he was simply a misunderstood child, a victim of circumstance. Obinna, his heart heavy with the weight of his family's fractured unity, began to withdraw. Ujunwa was not listening to him, and she totally rid him of all power and influence over Samuel. She turned Samuel against him. He began to sought comfort. He found solace in his work, seeking refuge from the turmoil at home. He felt a growing sense of helplessness, watching his family crumble under the weight of Ujunwa's misguided love. As Samuel entered adolescence, his need for independence clashed with his mother's overprotective nature. His attempts to assert himself were met with resistance, fueling his resentment and rebellion. His friends, many of whom came from families that do not keep a watch over their children, introduced him to alcohol and drugs. His lack of boundaries and his desire to fit in made him vulnerable to peer pressure. He found a sense of belonging in the rebellious world of his peers, a world where his unchecked impulses were celebrated, not condemned. Samuel's teen years were a descent into darkness. He began to experiment with alcohols and drugs, his rebellious spirit fueled by the intoxicating allure of forbidden pleasures. He would often sneak out at night, returning home in the early hours smelling of alcohol and cigarettes. His behavior spiraled out of control, his rage turning violent. He would lock his mother out of her own home for days, leaving her stranded, vulnerable and terrified. The monster grew. Whenever Samuel senses his father's absence, he would wreak havoc just to prove he now owns the house. Ujunwa, desperate and heartbroken, would run to her neighbors, pleading for help, the same neighbors she banned from correcting Samuel. They would try to intervene, to reason with Samuel, but their efforts were met with defiance and aggression. The boy, fueled by his unchecked rage and the intoxicating power of his addictions, became a terror to the family and to the community. Obinna, witnessing the escalating violence, felt a deep sense of despair. He had tried to warn Ujunwa to guide his son, but his effort had been in vain. Even when he tried to correct Samuel, Ujunwa would always interfere. He felt a growing sense of isolation, watching his family disintegrate around him. He felt like a failure, like he could not organize his home. Finally, the situation reached a breaking point. Samuel, in a fit of drunken fury, assaulted his mother, leaving her bruised and shaken. The neighbors, witnessing the escalating violence, quickly called Mr. Obinna, who in turn instructed them to call the police and remove Samuel from his house before he kills his wife and children. The neighbors called the police. Samuel was arrested, and his reign of terror was finally brought to an end. After Samuel's arrest, a heavy silence descended upon the household. Ujunwa, wrecked with guilt and grief, retreated into herself, her once vibrant spirit crushed by the weight of her mistakes. Ada, however, found it difficult to forgive her mother. The resentment that had simmered for years now boiled over, fueled by the realization that her mother's blindness had allowed Samuel to hurt all of them. "How could you not see?" she asked, her voice laced with bitterness. "How could you let him get away with all he did to us?" Beatrice, still withdrawn, found it difficult to express her feelings. She felt a deep sense of betrayal, not just from Samuel, but mostly from their mother. She had always been the peacemaker, the one who tried to bridge the gap between her brother and her sisters. Now she felt like her effort had been in vain. Clara, the youngest, remained rebellious. She saw Samuel's arrest as a victory, a sign that her mother was finally seeing the truth. But she also felt a sense of loss, a sense that her family had been irrevocably fractured. She couldn't understand why her mother had allowed things to go this far, and she couldn't forgive her for it. Lolo Juma, realizing the depth of her daughter's pain and the extent of her own mistakes, embarked on a journey of healing and reconciliation. She began attending therapy sessions, seeking help to understand her own emotional needs and learn healthier parenting techniques. She also worked on building a new relationship with Samuel while in prison, one based on accountability and healthy boundaries. She tried supporting him in his journey to recovery, but he had already begun to hate her. He accused her of his ill fate. He called her out for not correcting him when he ought to be corrected, and how that had made him a teen convict. Obinna, watching his wife crumble, felt a surge of sympathy and sorrow. He knew she was suffering, but he also knew that the path to healing was long and arduous. He had to find a way to mend the broken pieces of his family, to help Ujunwa and his daughters find their way back to peace and happiness. The rift kept getting worse. She reached out to her daughters, expressing her deep remorse and seeking forgiveness. She listened to their pain without judgment, offering them emotional support and showing them that she valued them as well. She knew that regaining their trust would be a long and difficult process, but she was determined to make amends for her past mistakes. Their daughters, still grappling with their own pain and resentment, might not be ready to forgive their mother immediately, but eventually they will come to terms. Ujunwa was willing to put in the work, hoping that one day they could all find a path to forgiveness and reconciliation. This is a story of a mother's love, a love so fierce that it blinded her to the dangers of unchecked indulgence. It is a story of a boy, a victim of his own upbringing, who lost his way, and it is a story of a family torn apart by the consequences of a single fatal flaw, the inability to let go of the illusion of a perfect child, even when reality demanded it. This is a story that teaches parents to be very careful on how they raise their children. Yes, you looked for a male child for the longest time, but that does not relinquish the importance of your daughters. In Igbo, we say "nwanyi which means daughters are light. The child you raise properly will be your lamp in the days of darkness to come. You will get old and you will need them. Whatever you instill in them as values is what you will reap in your old age. Someone said something that the way children or adults behave towards their parents is a reflection of how the parents treated those children when they depended on them. Did you enjoy this story? I did. Give us a thumbs up. Tell me what you think about Samuel and Mr. Obina's family in the comment section. How do you think this story is going to affect the society and how parental upbringing will be viewed moving forward?
Kindly click the subscribe button. We post very interesting African folk tales, beautiful historical stories, and true life stories of people and events. Turn on the notification bell so that you will be notified once any story is made available. Give us a thumbs up so that others can see this as well. Till the next story, enjoy your day. Bye.